Alright, so hey everyone. Today I want to take a look at the Deadzones for Aliens Fireteam Elite. This is being demonstrated on the Xbox Series X, just in case it differs on other platforms. The Xbox platform should be consistent. But to jump into it, for the camera, we have about a 29% rounded square Deadzone. So you have to move a little further in the corners. This is a very large Deadzone size. Even most older games hovered around 20 to 25%, and many modern games are around 15 to 20% now. So this is pretty big comparatively. There is this underlying axial deadzone, about 10%, causes a restriction around the axes. So if your stick is anywhere in these blue regions, you'll be moving perfectly in one of four directions. In this case, perfectly left. You can see that I'm bobbing the stick, but I'm just rotating perfectly left. Here's perfectly right. You don't start seeing diagonal movement until you break out of both axial deadzones. So to the screen region, it's moving subtly upward, now subtly downward. And this is most obvious when capping the view like this and looking for horizontal movement, which would be diagonal movement if it wasn't capped. For movement, it's pretty much identical, except the radial portion of this dead zone is smaller, so the overall dead zone size is just over 27%. And you can see this threshold very clearly because of how abrupt the movement begins. The restriction is identical, and I'll use this plate as a reference, so we'll just line up next to it, and you can see that I'm moving slightly to the right, but within the actual dead zone, I'm pretty well aligned with it. I did nudge it a little too far, but once I move it to the screen region, you can see that you start deviating from it. So exactly the same as the camera there. The shaded region represents the sprint threshold. So if you press the sprint button and you're under it, nothing will happen until you move beyond this threshold, begin sprinting. This does sort of buffer your sprints, so you can click the sprint under this, and then once you're over it, it'll start. But once you fall under it, you'll stop, and then you'll have to re-click the stick to begin again. And of course, if you're already in it, you just automatically sprint regardless. This threshold does go off the graph, and it goes off in sort of a perfect diagonal region. I'll show that in the dot graph on screen. But the acceleration curve is pretty interesting, but it starts out or it's an exponential curve. It's not a power function, but it starts out slow and then builds up faster near the edge of stick movement. But it flatlines at about 95%, and then you hit an acceleration jump at 100%. This threshold remains off this graph, but this threshold is at like horizontal 100% and about 20% so around the axes is where this will trigger. So you can see there's no acceleration. Acceleration will begin. No acceleration. Acceleration begins. So you can see this threshold defined here at the very edge of this this graph, and part of the weirdness of this this graph is that when you move here and pull the stick back, you can see that I'm maintaining the acceleration, and it's actually yeah, it didn't stop until right here. When testing, how I test it is I would push the stick until acceleration and then just input horizontal values until it stopped. So it stopped reliably at 95%, and that's where you see that it goes down to 94%, exactly where it should be on the curve. And that's how this threshold was maintained. Though of course you saw that I was able to keep this acceleration going further As you can see, that it's still being maintained and didn't stop until right here. It seems like if you move vertically, this can be maintained further. So for example, in extreme case, look down here, I can maintain this acceleration jump speed all the way till the dead zone. Then it'll, of course, actually moved into the dead zone a bit. That's a little weird. But you can see that basically the entire active range of the stick can maintain this acceleration jump. And even to silly extents like this, where if I move down here, you can see that it's even being maintained within this region where there should be no horizontal movement, but I'm still turning right. Now I'm on the leftward side and I'm still turning right, and you don't see it stop until I move into the range where leftward movement would begin. So this acceleration jump can be expanded to the entire active range of the stick depending on how you move the stick. However, it seems like time is also a factor. Like if your stick moves backwards too fast, it'll cancel out. So this seems like it'd be really sloppy, like you would, accelerate way more than you might want. But because it cancels out pretty quickly when you move fast enough, which many players might, this might not be something that's really noticeable during gameplay, but it is weird that it's implemented like this. The aiming curve is pretty much identical. The only difference here is that the acceleration jump is slightly reduced. Otherwise, everything else is the same. You can still preserve this acceleration the same. You can see that you're moving here, but this is how fast you move unaccelerated, so it's quite a big difference. There is an option for this acceleration, though I think it just controls the time it takes to build up to that speed. It doesn't actually change the amount of accelerated speed you get. There is no separate horizontal and vertical sensitivities. They're actually the same, which is good for default. So that normally skews your diagonal movement in other games that force different sensitivity ratios, but they're the same here. The ADS and aim sensitivities are of course different, but if you have them set the same, the ADS sensitivity is about consistently 18% of the aim sensitivity, or other words, the aim sensitivity is 5 times faster than the ADS sensitivity pretty consistently throughout it. So if you have the lowest value, which is 0.3, if they're both 0.3, that ratio is going to be the same. There's aim assist in this game, and the aim assist used here, there's 3 types. One is sort of a snap, so when you aim down with your weapon, when you're close enough to an enemy, you'll automatically snap to that target. Then we have the 2 sticky aim types. Tracking, this is actually tied with, as far as I can tell, tied with aiming your weapon. So very shortly after locking onto an enemy, you'll be pretty firmly locked and will track that target, and then after about a second you'll fall off. The only aim assist that's very general is the slowdown, so when passing over an enemy, your sensitivity will drop. Normally, in most games, the slowdown and the tracking are tied together. It makes sense in this type of game to perhaps separate it, because given how many enemies might be in front of you, having the tracking always active may drag your cursor around pretty consistently, and that may not be ideal. There are unfortunately no options to control aim assist, so if you don't like it, you just have to deal with it. So yeah. The last thing I'll mention is the menu cursor, and this is perfectly circular and about 15%. And there's no restriction, so subtle movements around the axes will create movement. You can see that moving around the vertical axes will create slight vertical movement, and the same with the horizontal axes. So, and you can see here that aim assist does apply on all these menu items. That's very common in these UI implementations. But this is pretty unfortunate because UI navigation is really, what you need the least precision for, but it has the best dead zone. Having a 15% circular dead zone would have been ideal for both movement and the camera dead zones, but they weren't applied there. So not great, but I've actually come across a few games, so there's some kind of trend with doing that, where the actual in-game dead zones are worse than the cursor dead zones. Or yeah. But that about covers things. So thanks for watching, and everyone, have a good rest of your day.